very exciting, and today we have, Fran, do you know what number you are in the number in county clerk number?
Oh, I'm only, no, we're not even that high. At least, on the pictures, there's only 1, 2, 3, 5. I would be 6.
Number 6, county clerk, all right, well, that's exciting.
I'm not sure about before that, but they were very long clerks, you know. One was like 30 years and, yeah.
All right, well, you're in it for 30 then, huh?
No, I don't know about 30.
So today we have Fran Keppler, our 6th county clerk, and we are thankful today we sent her a list of issues we want to talk about, which of course is mostly voting. So Fran,
Yes.
thanks for coming, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning, and thank you all for letting me come out and speak to you a little bit today. As Kelly said, she sent me a few questions and some other things that maybe would be of interest to you guys, so I'm just going to dive right into that.
I can't hear.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sitting.
Sorry about that. I will speak louder.
Okay.
Okay. All right, if you can't hear me or whatever, please let me know. First of all, as Kelly said, I am the newly elected county clerk, the election officer of Leavenworth County. I've held this office for a whole 30 days. So, being new to the election officer and the county clerk, but I have worked in the election office for over 8 years. So I have some experience there, but of course there's always room to learn, and I'm all about learning. So if there's any questions that you guys have or any clarifications you'd like, public speaking is not my forte, so please feel free to interject, stop me, say, hey, what are you talking about? I'm good with that. So it's your meeting. Any way that you want to ask questions or whatever, please feel free to do that. So with that, we'll just get started. One of the things that Kelly just wanted me to summarize was kind of the 2024 elections. It was a huge election year. We started out in March with the presidential preference primary. That was new to most everybody, except for Linda Shear. She had done one before. And I believe Jan had too, but it was totally new to me. I wasn't sure what in the world we were doing there, but we did it, and it all went fairly smooth. Then we went straight into the primary. The primary was, it was a good election. It was just a low turnout as well with that one because I believe there was no presidential primary, or no presidential candidates on that ballot, which was asked a lot. Why aren't there any presidents on this ballot? People didn't realize that the presidential preference primary took those presidents off that ballot. That was probably one of the biggest questions in the primary was, where's the president? So there wasn't any on there, so there was a little bit of a low turnout on that, but it was a huge, huge local election. A lot of heated candidates in there, and but mainly a Republican primary. There was only like 24% of Democrats that showed out for the primary. And then we had, of course, the presidential general election. I call it the presidential general, even though there was a lot of stuff on that ballot, but the president was the biggest issue on the ballot. The good things that came out of the elections, in my opinion, were the early voting. We had a lot of turnout for early voting, and this is just in person, either at our remote locations or downstairs in the basement. And all the elections, advanced voting was a huge success. And just the general alone, we had over 14,000 voters. And that wasn't mail ballots, that was just people who actually came in and cast their vote. Saturday voting, you guys ran that remarkably well. Everything went great. I loved it. I definitely plan on continuing a Saturday vote in the future, especially even in primaries. Maybe that got people out that wouldn't vote normally during the week. You know, maybe they just saw the signs and said, hey, let's go see what's going on there. But it was a huge success in my opinion. But all the elections were a disappointing turnout. They were a lot lower than projected. In the primary, we had maybe just a little over 10,000 voters. definitely a disappointment. And of course, in the primary, they were mostly Republicans. Like 78% were Republicans that voted during the presidential primary, or during the primary. But the advance voting, it still remained very high in all three elections. The general only had about a 65% turnout, which was way lower than what was forecasted. We thought it would be a lot more. The states thought that would be a lot more. The country thought it would be a lot more. But it was also a low turnout. On the mail ballot side, we sent out 3,500 mail ballots. Most of those were returned. We only got about half of our permanents returned. For what reason, you know, maybe they just didn't vote them, whatever. But it was a low turnout, a low return, I should say, on our mail ballots for our permanent voters. Some of the lessons learned during this election was we just had a lot of experienced help. From the top to the bottom, from our poll workers to our election officer, everybody, we had a lot of experienced help. And I think that contributed a lot to making everything run so smooth. I thought they were all running very smooth. No major catastrophes, nobody ran out of ballots, everything looked great, I thought. So, the other thing was maybe we had a few more lines than what I would have liked. Maybe a polling spot had to wait on a poll had to be programmed and sent out to them. So that's something that maybe in the future we'll do more of instead of less. If you're, poll worker or polling site only got 2, maybe they'll get 3 this year, just in case, or in the upcoming elections. But that's about the summary of the 24 elections. It's a busy year, but we made it through it. The next thing I want to kind of touch on is provisional ballots. Let's see, I'll just stay in the general, because general got the most. We had over 800 provisional ballots cast in the general election. And there are many different reasons that people use provisional ballots. The state only gives us a little window of how many different reasons we can use for provisional ballots. Some of them are, the majority, I should say, are moved within county. That is the majority of the reason that we would accept the ballot. The registered voters, they just moved. So that could also make them have a partial ballot that would be qualified. But provisional ballots, we look through once, twice, 3 times. I might look at it, someone else will look at it, someone else will look at it. We want every ballot that can possibly count to count, if there's any way possible. If they're a registered voter, they may only have a partial ballot qualification, but we try the best we can to make sure that they are all counted. And the Board of Canvassers then decides which ones count, which ones don't. So some of the reasons that we can accept a ballot, a provisional ballot, and count it would be moved within county, name change, an office clerical error, or they voted in the wrong polling place. Voted in the wrong polling place is the only reason that it would have a partial ballot. Say they moved from one section of town to another, maybe they changed, maybe their house district is different or their senate district is different. That would cause them only to have a partial ballot. But everything except for those 2 district things would count. And I just brought some of the reasons that we have that were written on some of these provisional ballots, just to kind of read to you and explain some of them. The first one I have is just moved. They moved from one spot to the other, and they only were partially qualified because they had an address change. Let's see, another one is they moved, it says registered online. Well, when we looked at it, we saw them registered, they were on time, so we could consider that a clerical error. I don't know why it didn't show up in the poll book, or if it wasn't, we don't know. but that would be considered a clerical error on our part. This voter says he's lived here for years, but it was not in the poll book. But then there's a notation that says after he voted, we just typed in Van and searched it, and his name came up. But his driver's license didn't scan. That also is considered a clerical error, because even though the driver's license didn't scan for whatever reason, we should have put in his name into the poll book, or at least typed his name in manually to see if he was in that poll book. And it turned out this voter was a voter. There was no reason he shouldn't have come up, but his driver's license didn't scan, and they didn't try to do it manually. So that was totally qualified, and it was a clerical error. This person was mailed a ballot, but didn't receive it, was leaving town tomorrow. That's what the reasoning is. This one was also accepted and counted as a clerical error, because the state thinks they don't give you that option, because if you're mailed a ballot, they want you to vote that ballot. And we do encourage that, but it doesn't always happen. So that would be considered a clerical error. You know, they didn't get it, or they don't know where it is, whatever. This one is name currently listed as Lydia. They were in the process of legally changing it, but the driver's license says Brianna. That driver's license did not match that voter's registration. So it was a clerical error. It was coded as a clerical error as well. Even though this person was registered white, we contacted them, we called them, whatever. We got a hold of them and said, hey, this is why you voted that ballot. Is there do you have that changed? It was changed in our system, but their license did not match. So that threw them into the provisional ballot. And that also was a clerical error.
But isn't the driver's license only supposed to be used for the picture?
Picture, name and picture. Yeah, we have to identify you. If my name was Francis Comer, which is my maiden name, if that's what it says on my driver's license, if I'm registered as Fran Keppler, then that they have no way of knowing. You know, we had to really do some research on that and find out.
So that vote was thrown out?
Nope, that vote was totally counted after we researched it, after we contacted the person and made sure that this was that person.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. Provisional ballots are a lot of work. They are touched by 3, 4, 5 times just to make sure that we've got it right. This one was registered to vote in. When we got it back to the office, we'll find us. Says they voted in the wrong precinct. We don't know where that information came from. So that was definitely a qualified vote, but it was a clerical error according to the state, because there's no other category to put that in. This person received an advance ballot, but the kids tore it up. So they voted the correct ballot. That too, a clerical error, because there's nothing else to lump that into. So those are just some of the provisionals that we received, some of the reasons, and I didn't go through a lot to see, but that's how usually provisionals come in. But yes, provisionals are a lot of work. They take a lot of time, especially when you're getting 8, 9, 900 at a time. We did accept 412, and only about 425 were rejected. And a provisional ballot has even been put into the DS200 that council. So that would be a clerical error. There are so many reasons. It's just a lump. Can't figure out we can't put a reason for everything that a voter does, so we just lump it together. Most of the reasons that we rejected any of the provisional ballots was they just weren't registered. And that happens a lot. They thought they were registered through the DMV, and we'll talk about that a little more later. But that was mostly, they just weren't registered, or registered after the deadline, or the close of registration. Yes, ma'am.
In your system, can you see if they were registered in the past but became inactive because they didn't vote regularly?
Yes.
Are you seeing some of that too?
Yes, and we'll go, and I'll talk a little bit more about an well. But those are kind of the reasons for our provisional ballots, and, we do get a lot. We get a lot of provisional ballots.
Was there
So-
more this year than ever?
No, there were less this year, because, and that was because of voter turnout. But yes, we did have less provisional ballots.
Huh.
this year.
800 is less than,
800 is less.
Even as a percentage of the total voters,
And probably not as presented, the total.
total that
No,
voted?
I'm sure it was about the same, but,
So Fran, I understand that you, just look at the picture and the name. You don't even know if they're a Leavenworth County resident. Because you're
So
not
on
looking at the,
driver's
on the driver's license.
yes, we don't care if it's a Washington State or
Okay.
anybody's, but we don't care.
Right,
That
that explains it.
picture and name has to match.
And they're in the
Yes,
law.
and yes.
It doesn't matter what their address is, as long as they state their address that we have in their voter registration. As long as it's in that poll book, with that address and that name, they should be good to go. As far as voter registration goes, as you're all aware, there's so many ways that you can register to vote. You can do it online, the SOS, there's, votekansas.org, the DMV, there's several in person. There's a lot of ways that we can get registered to vote. Last year, we got over 3,000 from DMV alone. The DMV, we know there's problems there. There are problems, but we don't know where that disconnect comes. We think it is from the ones who renew online, not the ones who actually come into the DMV and register there. We think the disconnect, and the Secretary of State's the one that told me this, they think it's through people who register online. We don't know if it's a shortage of staff, we don't know why that disconnect is there. But that is something that the Secretary of State's working on, and it's something that I will continue to ask at every training or every conference we have.
Fran, we have people come into the office and they're mad because they registered through the DMV and they said that the wrong party was assigning them. So what's their recourse? Just come in?
Well,
They don't trust
if they
online.
call us or whatever and say, hey, I'm not registered as this party, usually they did. I don't know if they pushed the wrong button, I don't know, but usually, yes, we have a copy of that registration that's scanned in or sent in to the DMV and says, yeah, they did.
But it's easy to
register.
change, you can just change it
Absolutely.
online. You can do it on
And
your
in the
phone.
general, it doesn't matter.
Right, yeah, it doesn't matter that, but if it
They
is
all
the wrong
want the same
party,
ballot.
usually they've forgotten that they had picked that party, or they accidentally picked the wrong party.
But the primary does matter because
And
this
the
year we
primary-
had three positions determined by a primary.
Exactly.
Yes.
The primary did make a difference. And there was lots of pushback at the primary, that's the big issue.
Is that, can I continue on that?
Sure, absolutely.
So someone comes in and they know that they registered as a Democrat, but they get to the polling place and they're handed a Republican ballot. Can they argue and get a Democrat? I know it'd be, no.
No, that has to be changed beforehand.
Well beforehand.
Well beforehand.
Right, the only one that can do that when you come into a polling place is if you're an unregistered or an
Yes.
unaffiliated voter. They can
Unaffiliated
request
voters
one or
can't
the
take
other,
that
each
choice.
candidate or
No.
a party affiliation.
No, they were in person
I mean,
registering.
yeah,
at
we're
the
never
DMV.
gonna deny anyone to vote. They can vote for provisional ballot. We need more research on that, and we will. If they think they were one party and they got a different ballot, we will give them that party that they want, and they will vote a provisional, and then we'll research it once we get it back to the office and.
And when they vote provisional, they fill out a new voter registration.
That's right.
So they fix their party at the same time that they
They
vote
do.
provisionally.
The problem is the deadline, and correct me if I'm wrong, the deadline for party affiliation is 1 June.
Yes.
When the primary is in August. So you have to be thinking 2 months ahead of time, and that just doesn't happen.
Right.
Well, I mean, except for these people in here.
Doesn't happen.
That is true. And a lot of people just don't realize that they did register as a party, and they're like, I was already there. I'm sorry, but no, here's your registration. We can print that out. Every registration is scanned into a voter record, so when we pull it up, we can print out the original, or they picked the wrong, they accidentally picked the wrong. The DMV, and as you know, the DMV, we do have a lot of problems with getting this. One day we may have 10, the next day we could get a 200 list. And they were registered 3 months ago. So we're just not sure where that disconnect comes from at this point. But if you're registered, or if you registered at the DMV and we get it the day after the cutoff for registration, we do backdate those. Those are absolutely legal to backdate. That's about the only thing. Yes, ma'am?
Is there so much of a problem with the DMV? It would be better if people didn't register.
No, because like I said, we still have 3,000 voters registered through the DMV.
Okay.
So that, you know, I'm not sure what the percentage is total that people have registered through the DMV, but 3,000 voters is pretty good.
Okay.
So I'm glad we have that. And they're called motor voters or whatever. Through the Secretary of State's, they call that section motor voters, but they do know that there is a problem with getting into
And the
us.
DMV statewide is actually under the Secretary of State.
Absolutely.
So it's the same department, so it ought to be fixable if they figure
Right.
out what it is.
Right, they've just got to figure out where that disconnect is coming from. If there's no more questions on that, we'll move on to voter registration.
It's in the Secretary of State's office.
Voter registration, you've got active, canceled, or suspense is the status that you can be given any voter registration. Active is someone who's completed their voter registration as they should. Everything's on there, all the information we need. We put them in, they're good to go. They're in our poll pads, no problems. They haven't moved, they've got the correct address, the whole. Canceled, it's pretty hard to cancel someone in Kansas. The only reasons that you can cancel a person in Kansas is they've moved out of county and you have evidence of that. Meaning they've come on an MBR list, an ETO list, you've sent them a confirmation, you've gotten that confirmation back that says, yep, we moved. Or they've been convicted of a felony or death. Those are the only ways that you can cancel a voter in Kansas. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so I know you need proof before you cancel somebody, but in years of knocking doors, there will be 5 different households listed at the same address. And the current owner tells me, oh, I bought the house from that family, and they bought the house from that family, and they're still on the list. If I would show a deed where they sold the home, and then they're no longer living there, is that proof enough to remove them?
No. No, I have to have confirmation from that voter. We send out what we call confirmation cards, which are these blue cards. We just sent out probably, I would say 100 last week. We've gotten 3 back. We have a problem with getting people to actually tell us that they have moved. You know, if that card comes back, you know, no forwarding address, or with a forwarding address, we would then again forward that to the new address. But other than that, we would scan that into their file, because after they have been sent that confirmation notice and they have not voted in 2 general elections, 2 national general elections, they can't be canceled. So you're talking 8 years from the date that we sent that voter confirmation. Yes, ma'am. That's it.
Okay, I have lived in my place 6 years. This is addressed to the lady that lived there before me. What do I do with it?
Well,
She left no
send that back to us, return to sender, so I can put that into her voter registration, whoever lived there before, and that would constitute me being able to cancel her on down the road. But for now, yes, if you receive that, please just send it straight back to us.
Okay, clarification, you just said you have to hear from the voter in order to remove them.
Well-
But if that's addressed to the voter and she replies, that's enough?
No, I'm gonna scan that in, because it says she no longer lives here, return to sender. According to her, she no longer lives there. But they also have to miss 2 more elections, 2 more national elections before I can cancel them.
What was the criteria or the trigger for sending the blue cards out?
They could be, for some reason, we've got notification. There is the National Voters Act, they send out a list every year that they may have people who they think have moved. There's an NCO list. There's also, we've gotten return mail on. Sometimes we get return ballots. You know, they've asked for a ballot, it comes back to us. So anything that we have that says, well, I'm sorry, we can't forward that, or any piece of return mail, that constitutes that inactive status.
NCO list is,
The NCO list, I'm not sure what exactly it stands for, but it is, it's just another group that helps us narrow down, voters that have moved out of the county.
Did you say you look up obituaries?
Yes, every day we will look at the paper for obituaries. We get them from Terry Lois if they're out of state, who, you know, maybe they passed out of state, but we still get them. Always, every day, we go through obituaries. We get them from the funeral home, we get them emailed to us. There's, so if we see the obituary in the paper, or if Terry Lois brings us one that says that they are out of state and have passed, then we can go ahead and cancel them then. But we have to have something like that.
What kind of reciprocity do you have with other states where a person leaves here and goes to that state and registers to vote? Are you notified by surrounding states of that? 'Cause
Hopefully.
I know some states do that.
Some states do, but not, we haven't gotten one in a very long time.
Really?
You know, if a voter returns one of those blue cards that she just had, if she returns that, or that person returns that card and it says that they moved to Missouri, then we call the election office. We always call and say, hey, we've got that saying that, do you have them registered there so we can take them off our voter rolls?
You call it the other election office?
We will,
Oh, you
yes.
verify it, so, but, this other states, I'm thinking of Missouri, used to just have, when you registered
Well, if
there,
they do,
they asked you
yeah.
if you were registered somewhere else, and then they sent a card and you signed it.
Sometimes we get them, not often,
Wow.
not often.
What you do on a voter registration form, it asks where were you registered before. I always assumed
Yes.
that was to not notify that other district.
Uh-huh.
It is, and if they put that on there as some other, even another county, which that's not a big deal, because we can pull from other counties to register people. But if it's another state, we try the best we can to notify them as an election office that they have moved. We don't get too many calls for that.
So, go ahead. So if someone is called for jury duty, like my son who has moved out of state and is registered in a different state, but he still gets called for jury duty, and then he puts on jury duty that I have, I live in another state, that doesn't trigger him being
Does
removed
not
from
come
the
back
voter
to us.
rolls?
Nope.
Okay,
That's all district court,
Yeah.
that never comes back to us.
yeah, okay.
So it's so hard to remove somebody from the rolls, which is a good thing, but then on the other hand, when you look at percentage of turnout, on our current list, do you think we have 10% who are probably not even here anymore, just based off of the turn, or would you even hazard a guess?
I probably wouldn't hazard to guess at this point. I mean, I'm sure there's a report out there I could run that tells me that, but I didn't look into that. But I really don't know the answer to that at this point. I could find that answer.
It's some number, right? There's some
Yeah,
number
there
on
is
that
a
you
number,
know
I'm
that
sure.
they're in the churn of the process of 8 years.
Yeah.
It would just be interesting to know, because when you say the voter turnout is 65%, if you got 15% of people, of voters that aren't.
Don't even live here anymore.
Yeah.
And there's no way of us knowing that.
But when there is a special mail ballot election, that's your opportunity, right?
Yes.
You do clean those up at the
Absolutely.
point.
It's
And
first
so,
in, when we have a mail ballot election, we will send this to a company who goes through and says, okay, this person probably didn't hear, this person is, and then that starts the blue cards that we send out, the confirmation cards. And we try to get those as clean as we possibly can before we send out these ballots. Of course, there's always gonna be those that we miss,
but
because
if the ballot gets sent to someone, and they're not there anymore, it comes back.
Yes,
right? So you
because it's not
clean that in
forwardable.
as well. Yeah.
So we will scan that in, that outer envelope, we'll scan that into the record so that we know that is a legitimate piece of information that we can later on cancel.
That's why I'm always asking people to find hear any part of the conversation on that, my first question is, did you file the death certificate? Not only for stopping fraud, but trying to clean up the voter rolls.
Yeah, we are very diligent on trying to clean up our voter rolls. We have someone every day going through either adding registrations or checking out registrations, especially, our suspense, which is a voter who hasn't completed their voter registration. Maybe they're missing their birthday. They didn't get their driver's license or their birth, or something on there. So we work diligently to contact those people and try to get them fully activated. Youth Cabo voters, which are overseas military or overseas civilians, they also are under suspense because they're not a fully qualified voter of Kansas or Leavenworth County. So those also are considered suspense voters. We also have a suspended voter, which that's not a status, it's a reason. A suspended voter is someone who has not voted in the last 2 national elections. Two. And the reason they are, and this is a state law, it's not NBRA, it's not NBRA, it's state, and it is primarily to help candidates exclude those who probably aren't gonna vote, so that they're not sending their material to voters who aren't gonna vote. And that's just, it's a status, it's not status, it's just a reason that someone would be suspended.
So they missed 2 elections that changed to inactive, then they show up to vote, and change the status after?
Well,
Change back to active?
absolutely. Anytime you vote, your status will roll right into active. We had a lot more inactive voters before this election than we have now. We have about 1,400, a little over 1,400 inactive voters. And we have, I don't know what the number was beforehand, but it's always, we have a lot more before, but once they vote, that rolls them right back into the active status. So that kind of helps with that a little, but it does skew the outcome of your percentages, absolutely. The other thing was non-citizen voters. We have a couple ways of checking for non-citizens voter rolls. The first thing is on your voter application, those first 2 questions say, are you a citizen? Are you 18? If you are not, do not fill out this. Doesn't mean people might not do that. So the second way that we verify that you are a citizen is through the DMV. When we add a new voter, or even if we change an address, it will go through a process that checks to see if that social security number they've given us, or the last 4 of their social, or their driver's license matches. And if it comes up, everything matches, or a citizen, it says, is this a match? You say yes, we move forward. If there's no match, then we have to dig a little deeper into it and figure out why they weren't matched. And that's a little harder than some. And we would code those as suspense instead of just active voters. So really, I don't have any way of checking if there are any non-citizens. I don't know. That is our only 2 checks that we have. Our checks and balances. It's just on their voter registration card and on the DMV. As far as I know, no municipality in Kansas has 2 rolls for non-citizens and citizens. So that's directly from the Secretary of State's office. As far as I know, nobody's got those. So the concerns for non-citizen voters, I'm sure is out there, but that's our checks. That's our checks and balances for that. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. By law, does each county maintain their own separate database, or is there a state database?
It's a statewide database. That's why we are dealing with the DMV.
So you're accessing all the same central database?
Absolutely. If you lived in Johnson County and moved to Leavenworth County, I can pull all of your Johnson County voter history, all your information to Leavenworth County. Okay. And then your address is there, but everything else I can pull from any county in Kansas. over to Leavenworth County.
So when you say there's issues with the DMV, does that mean the data that they or their system is inputting when they register someone is just like, well, like there's a latency in there? I mean, it's not someone
They don't
literally.
know. They
No.
don't really know.
We don't really know. We don't know where that disconnect's coming from.
We've been trying to-
According to the Secretary of State, we don't know why it takes, maybe it's personnel, maybe they don't have enough
DMV
personnel.
does not put people into that database.
No.
Only people
That's,
who put it-
that's what I'm getting
It's
at.
No.
only the
They
county
send it
clerk who
to us.
Yes.
They are documenting stuff, but the data is not getting.
Nope.
Then
It has to go to us.
Yeah.
And that's where, people are, well, I registered with it. When I
Do you
got
have
my
any
driver's
idea-
license, I changed my address.
Idea whether there are certain counties that are doing it better than others?
I don't know at this point.
It'd
We
be
have,
interesting to find out for the Secretary of State,
Yes.
because if something's working in one county and not in another, we could find out what the
exactly,
problem is.
and we have a lot of training going forward. We haven't had any training thus far in my big 30 days as the election officer.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I'm sure in the future, there will be a lot of, answers to some of these questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be good to know. Because, we had a lot of that show up this year at the polling places,
Absolutely.
but I thought maybe it was unique to Leavenworth County, but I
No.
didn't realize it's.
It is statewide.
But some places are, and some places solve problems better than others, depending
Right.
on who's in the
That's true.
respective offices.
That's true. Yes, sir.
And under you said 800 provisionals, 425 were rejected?
Yes.
And out of those, were there any others you had to escalate to say, hey, we think something fraud or whatever? Was there a number that you're still adjudicating, or is it just like, they just didn't meet the administrative criteria?
They just didn't meet the administrative criteria on that. There were none that really threw up any red flags and said, maybe this shouldn't be in here. That I know of, and I did a lot. So I'm not,
Thank you.
I didn't see any. Yes,
It seems like if non-citizen is such an important issue, even though we don't think it's happening here, and the government has so much information, like, it seems like the process would be able to
There
be
should be-
validated.
yes, there should be
Some
an
way,
easier
I mean, there's
situation.
plenty of information that the government has to tell if there's a person is a citizen or not. And so, rather than trying to change laws and blah, 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 it seems like the focus ought to be getting to the root cause of being able to put a process in place to verify once and for all, is a person a citizen or not? So that you don't have to, you're
I would totally
limited
agree.
today.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that.
It might be a federal database,
Yes.
but that somebody has a database that says this person is a citizen or not.
Yes, and I think,
Or more to the point, they are a citizen, if they don't show up on that list, then at least you have to investigate it, but it cuts the number of questions
Yeah, and-
way, way, way down.
yeah, and I think Pat Proctor has a bill that he's trying to push that says the DMV needs to send the election office a report of non-citizens every month. That would help out a lot as well.
But people go through immigration status and, get naturalized, so they might have been an immigrant at one point, but now they're
And there is
naturalized.
a place on that voter registration says your naturalization number. And we do have a few that use it, but, not too many. Yeah.
The point is, there's a database somewhere that
There is a
says,
database somewhere.
and you should have access to it.
I would have to agree.
Not just in Kansas, but nationwide.
Right. Yeah, I would totally agree, yes.
You said that, Proctor has a bill trying to get a non-citizen list,
Yes.
is that coming from the DMV?
DMV.
Driver's license?
Yes. Yeah, that would come directly from the DMV every 30 days, whatever that you would like to have done.
So how does DMV know whether it's a citizen?
Well, when they first apply for a driver's license, they have to have that birth certificate or their passport or something. And especially with the new, Real ID, they've got, your marriage license has to be there if you've been married. There's all kinds of, if you've had any kind of name change, you have to have proof that,
Over in the homeless shelter, we end up with this. We have one lady that had to come up with $60. She'd been married twice. She had to get both of those certificates. You know, you have to get a name change record from your birth certificate to who you are now, and every step of that way, divorce has to be verified and documented.
Absolutely.
It's quite a complicated process for people that don't marry one guy and stay married for 56 years, almost 57.
And do you know what your marriage license is? I've been married for 39, I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
I'd have to ask one of them.
Exactly.
So-
cost you $70-some.
And I think that discriminates against women.
Woo-hoo!
It
That's
does
true.
anyway, because we're-
It's true.
Anybody can
Yeah.
change, in many states, anybody
We
can
should
change
change
their
our
name
names.
at the time of marriage without any paperwork whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, they can't change it back.
Yeah.
Can't change it.
Yeah, get married again,
You have to
Prove it, change it back.
then you get married again.
I have
On non-citizen voting, has the Leavenworth County Clerk's Office experienced any wave of non-citizen attempts to register?
Not that I'm aware of, and I did most of the registrations last year, me and Jeff John. We did most of it, and not, I mean, if there were any questions on, you know, somebody, if it didn't come up in that database from the DMV, we definitely researched that, or we just put them on suspense and said, you know, you're gonna vote provisional until we look deeper into this. But I don't think we've had any huge numbers come in.
Have we had any numbers come in?
No, not that I know of. Like I said, if it doesn't, if I can't verify that through the DMV, then I'm gonna put you on suspense, so that even if you are a non-citizen, yeah, you're gonna be able to vote a provisional, but then it's gonna get looked at a whole lot more in depth.
And we haven't had to do that.
No.
So we have no waves of people coming in over the
Not
last
that I-
decade that they're fighting to register
Not that I'm
and vote.
aware of.
So is that zero last year, or is that as long as you can remember?
As long as I can, I mean, I've done a lot of voter registrations, and we haven't had, very many that did not, you know, the DMV didn't come back and say, yeah, you're good to go. I mean, there have been some, and like I said, those were put on suspense, and as they're not that they're not qualified, they're just not gonna show up in our poll tabs or our voter rolls at that time. Did you have questions?
Yes, ma'am, so in fact, the DMV database does have the check, or whatever they're using to say citizen.
Yes, that's.
They have to prove it.
Yes, that's where it resides.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to remember when I retired from the military, Washington State mentioned that. I switched to driver's license to real ID, and I had to
Yeah.
bring in more than just my
Yes.
DMV.
But that law is only about 10 years old,
If that.
if that.
Real ID, yeah.
Real ID's not that old.
But you have to renew, it has to be.
But that's, you don't have to show your birth certificate every time you renew.
No,
If you're
no,
not
no.
a star license.
As long as you haven't changed anything.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember when I had to get a Kansas driver's license, I had to bring in more
Yes.
stuff. I just
Yeah.
didn't, hey, here's my
Yes.
DMV thing.
You know, we used
Okay,
to
I won't.
require citizenship proof. You had to have a birth certificate, you had to have a passport, you had to have something that said you were a citizen.
When, do you
That
know
went away.
when we had to do that?
It was been within the last 8 years, because when I first started in the clerk's office, you did have to have proof of citizenship.
I think that bill, or I think that law happened in 2012, and then there was a lawsuit against it.
So, yeah, we can no longer
Because I
require
realized
that.
we made it tougher.
We did.
Because.
It
of
was
the-
a new law.
Yeah, but that's still in effect.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got my citizenship in 2020, and so I haven't had a new driver's license since then, yet I was able to register to vote. So somewhere in there, I don't know what my driver's license states, because it would be my real ID from prior to my citizenship, so.
Well, did you put a naturalization number on your voter registration?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So then that linked back to.
Yes.
That would establish.
Right, but I'm saying if you're using just those votes, then somebody has to go in and go into the DMV then to put my information in. It's not coming to you from the DMV, you're sending stuff back to the DMV, is that correct?
No, we're not sending things back to the DMV. The DMV strictly sending them to us. We have no way of sending them back.
So So I haven't changed anything on my driver's license. That's what my point is. So.
Well, I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but as long as you have that naturalization on your original registration, then that will just continue on until we did get a check from you something changed.
So if this goes ahead, what Pat Proctor's wanting to do, then I'm gonna be on that list as the DMV as a non-citizen.
Not a non-citizen, because
Okay,
it's coming
that'll be
every month,
interesting.
so.
All right, I can't wait for that one.
You should come up as a non-citizen because you have that. So.
Can I say something about the non-citizen thing? I think the Secretary of State's office just received in December a list of 38,000 non-citizens that have driver's license in Kansas. And I think on our Facebook page, we put the testimony in Congress from Mr. Caskey. And of those 38,000, they had 202 that were in question, and then they whittled that down to 85, and then they're down to 21. And he had said that number will absolutely go down. So I guess it would be just like you, Sarah. You know, you're one of those 202.
Right.
You gotta match, you know, just
Right,
based on
exactly.
timeline, you gotta match where you are.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what
Yeah.
comes out of that. I'd really like to know how big the problem really is.
Yes, I would like that as well.
All right, let's move on.
Any more questions?
I think we should move on from that.
As far as, so far this year, but we were very early in the year, the Secretary of State hasn't come out with any new laws. You know, the 3-day grace period, that is on the table. That could very well go away with no ballots.
How many ballots did you receive after the 3-day grace period?
On the Wednesday after the election, we received 80. Thursday, 80. Thursday was 8, and Friday was 8.
Okay,
So that would be 100 votes that weren't counted.
yeah.
If they had, you know, by election day. I don't think sending out ballots would help that. I think that would just add to the problem of losing your ballot or forgetting
Yeah.
your ballot or whatever. So, it doesn't make the election any harder to have it that day or 2 days later to count those ballots for us anyway.
Were they all postmarked?
Yes, we will not take a ballot that's not postmarked. We can go to the post office, we look at those. If they're not postmarked, I'm giving them back. I'm saying, can you postmark these? But mostly all of them, they know now, moving forward, because we've talked to the postmaster, that these ballots must be postmarked. So we haven't had much problem. We didn't have hardly any problem with that this year anyway. In these past elections.
I'm correct, especially as it gets towards that deadline, you're going to the post office on a daily basis to pick up any ballots that have come in.
Yes.
So that you don't have any more than you have to that have gotten stuck in the post
Right.
office and not
Yeah,
delivered to you.
we don't want them sitting there for 2 or 3
Absolutely.
days. We go every day, pick those up. Janet, we usually pick them up on her way in. She pick those up.
I
when
knew
they
that
get
from
home.
working in the election
Yeah.
office.
So that we had those ballots. We didn't want them sitting around for anywhere else than in our office.
Okay, so you said Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Were there any that arrived the next week?
No.
Okay.
There might have been, I don't know. We did not track those.
Okay,
There were, like I said, we got 8 on Thursday, 8 on Friday.
Yeah,
So there was never a lot.
right.
There's never.
So I have another
Maybe some
question
flowers.
regarding our friend Pat Proctor.
Uh-huh.
So he's online saying that he wants to get rid of advance voting.
That's too bad, in my opinion, and strictly in my opinion. I think advanced voting was a huge success in Leavenworth County. Maybe not in other places, but I think we did a great job. You guys did a wonderful job on Saturday. I definitely want to continue that forward. All of our remote places did very well, even in primaries. You know, a Saturday primary early vote, that's a goal for me, is to do that. Yes.
So, with regards to the election committee and legislation that's kind of on the table, you said you would like to receive the non-citizen list monthly, that would help you?
Yes.
And you don't like, eliminating early voting? Are there other issues that you really like that could come down the pike or that cause you a lot of angst that might come up?
Well,
Drop boxes?
Drop boxes. I love them. I think, I like drop boxes as well. There's a lot of evidence against drop boxes. Ours have cameras on them, they are checked daily, they are locked with 2 locks. I'm sure there's people out there that could get into them, but we have not had that problem so far in Leavenworth anyway.
When you say that the box cameras are checked daily, has anybody seen somebody stuffing, I think 10 is the max that one
Right.
person can.
We haven't looked at all, because these are running 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
We haven't looked at all the footage, but no, we have not found any, it's usually singles or doubles. We haven't seen anybody carrying an armload and shoving them in that box. And like I said, we have not looked at all the footage, because there's a lot of days, there's 20 days of footage here, 24 hours a day. But, just spot checking them, so far we have not seen that.
I have another odd question. Do you have people call in and tell you that there's fraud being committed, that they saw fraud, or they know of an instance of fraud? Like this thing that went on in Johnson County where the sheriff said he'd had 103 phone calls or contacts that said there was fraud. It turned out they all came from 3 people. And now that sheriff's gone and they have a new sheriff, they've investigated and said there was not a single one of those instances that meant anything. And it was just those 3 people coming up with one made up story after another.
We got no calls about fraud.
Good.
That I'm aware of.
Obviously, they don't do things that well in Johnson County.
But no, the sheriff hasn't said anything about having any calls. We have had, as far as I know, we've had 0 calls about fraud. Yes.
How many boxes are there in Leavenworth County, and if we want to add more, what's the process for that?
The process, well, we have, in Leavenworth County, we have 4 at this point. We have one here, we have one at the courthouse. We used to have one down at City Hall, but it wasn't utilized. And it was in a really bad place, and we didn't like the security unit there. So we did take that one out. We have one at the Basel Library, and then we have one at the Annex in Tomanoxie. And as I said, all those are checked daily. Usually on our way home from work or whatever, someone will get this one, someone will get this one. So they are all just checked.
So the bill pending, I think right now, is brought by the Secretary of State to standardize across the state of Kansas. So you would support?
Absolutely. I think drop boxes are maybe not, I hate to say more reliable than the post office, but if it goes in the drop box, but for sure, if it goes in that drop box, I'm gonna get it.
I do too. All election workers have to do an advanced ballot. Well, maybe if they work in their own polling place, but most of us don't work in our own polling place, and so we have to vote in advance. And I put it in the drop box. I don't put it in the mail.
Yes, and we had a lot of that this year. Most went in the drop box. Few by mail, but those were mostly on permanent that came back by mail, but a lot were in the drop box, especially in the one courthouse. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a good argument against advanced voting?
That's a good question, because I don't have an answer for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I am a strong component of advanced voting. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you would just logistically, you would think that if you didn't have advanced voting, you'd have all of this coming in on election day, people being overwhelmed with more chances of making a mistake.
Yes, we have more mistakes, we'd have to have more full heads, we'd have to have more staff. It would be more all the way around.
Yeah.
But as far as the 3-day grace period goes, if they do remove that, we will do our very best to notify the voters. We'll put it in the paper. When we send out a ballot, it is printed on the ballot itself and in the instructions. We also put an instruction sheet in there. We would probably add, this has to be returned. We have to be received by election day, by 7 p.m. election day. Yeah, it would have to be, something very prominent.
Fran, I think it would be a good idea to educate the public on these provisional ballot, the 4 or 5 items that you mentioned there. Because there is a huge misunderstanding, you know, I used to work the ballots too. I want to vote, so you give them a provisional. You know, I mean, it's your right, it's my right to vote.
Yes.
And so you end up doing that. If we could notify people that they have to get this stuff fixed, your address fixed, or your status, even prior to the election somehow, that would be good. We're sending out other paperwork from the county, so let's put something like that in the envelope as well.
True. And I am all about any suggestions you guys have to make this an easier process, please let me know.
I would encourage you to put it back on the Secretary of State to encourage them to do something statewide, because there needs to be consistency across the counties.
You're absolutely right on that. It should be.
And the advertising on TV. I mean, there's different ways that it could be done,
Yes.
but.
And they could put it on TV. We as a county could not, but they could. I mean, we could Facebook it, we could put it on Instagram, all that, but that's not gonna reach everyone.
And unfortunately, every county is not quite as good as Leavenworth County.
That's true.
That is true.
That is true.
And we're one of the larger counties, so.
Yes.
So that's the other thing. You know, usually, the next couple of years are learning years to get ready for that next big presidential election. So we do have a lot of trainings coming up that, myself and my staff will be attending, a lot of conference calls, just a lot. So, and we will be at all of those. But I do welcome any of your concerns or your questions, or if you've got better ways that we could do things, please. My door's always open, let me know.
Yes.
So, poll watchers, my experience is, depends on the judge, but we are supposed to be able to hear the name and the address. And, sometimes the person recites it too quietly, and we can't hear it. We're not supposed to interrupt, but it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, and then the worker will give it to us. Is there a way that the poll watchers can be closer, or?
Well,
that's
the
not-
state law is 3 feet. Can't be any closer to that.
Right, but when they set you 10 feet away,
True.
it's impossible.
And maybe that's just a matter of training. I need to train our poll workers a little better on that.
And it depends on the space too, like
Yes.
where we were.
Absolutely.
We were right up against the wall, the room was somewhat narrow, and,
Yes, you're absolutely right.
you know, they were away. But we would give them the sign-in sheet so that they could check the names, you know, when there wasn't.
And that's totally
When
okay.
there wasn't a big line, we would give them the list, so that if they had one they weren't sure about, they could go back and check it themselves.
My judge is not.
Yeah, it's training.
No, that's because Linda had a good judge.
Kelly!
That's just a matter of training, and we will address that at our next training for poll.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have
It's
any
11.
questions?
It's 11.
Any other questions?
Did you get to finish your speech? We interrupted.
I'm done.
I did have one.
Yes.
Okay, back to where you said partial voting, on a provisional, and they only count parts. So what I'm hearing you say is, I moved, I'm in a different precinct, and this ballot is printed for this
Right.
precinct. So you can only count the portion of, you can only count presidential and.
Exactly.
Presidential, county offices that are county-wide, your office, my office, sheriff's office, those will all be counted.
So the races that
The
are
House
on the
district
ballot
may
will be
change, the Senate district may change, that would not count.
So if you were in Gossage and, you're printed with Pittman, Clem, then that vote got thrown out.
That vote would not count.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Yes.
Just a question, not for attribution, and I know the offices, the services you provide, you guys are under a tremendous amount of pressure to do more with less. But do you feel you have the adequate staff on a day-to-day to take care of, we're all saying, hey, well,
Yes.
it should be great and all that, but you have a day-to-day job which we don't see.
Yes.
Do you feel you have what you need?
I do, at this point, yes. With our poll workers, you know, we hire a lot. I'd rather have too many than less. So, I make sure that that's in the budget every year, especially on larger elections, that we have plenty of election staff. We hire part-time people to come in during elections or on-call people, just so that we do have that staffing.
And you do contract with third parties to scrub your databases, is that true? Is what you?
Yes, we have recruiters who we will send a list to, and they will send us back the correct address or things like that. So that we're not sending ballots out to people who no longer live there. That's our main goal with that. Yes, dear.
So there's been some restructuring with your new administration. So the budget was taken off you, that's now the finance department, and then.
It's both. I mean, we both work together with that, yes. Because there are statutory things that I still have to do for budgets and what have you.
Yeah.
And so then, can you explain Jill's role?
She's my Helen.
Okay.
Helen took over Helen strictly worked, elections, voter rolls, everything that went to do with our third-party ES&S or Elvis or any of that. That was her job, and that's what, Jill's role is today. But I do believe in cross-training, because, today we're slow. You know, this week's been slow, this month's been slow. So, of course, Jill can also do the business. She can do other things that Stephanie might be doing as well. Because we do cross-train everyone in our office.
So will she be the one going forward that is going to be training the poll judges and poll workers?
Her and I both will, just like it has been in the past. That's the goal.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, I think everybody needs to get big hands for Fran. Too much on the spot, Fran.
No, you did great.
We are, I think everybody could agree that any type of form we're in with the league, we are always so proud to be able to say, well, our clerk's office does this, and have a great relationship, and we were so proud to partner this year, on the Saturday voting, because that is just.
That was awesome. I really like that. And going forward, I hope you guys will do it again.
Yeah, we are just so happy to have a great county clerk's office, and thank you for being here today. And so I have a little something for you.
All right.
Get your voting card.